once you've been given the ability to pray in tongues, it becomes your responsibility to pray in the different ones at the right time and to pray in it. There was a man of God, and he said something that I will never forget. He said, once you understand the voice of God, or can hear the voice of God, you become accountable to doing what it says, what He says. He says, before you know the voice of God, if you did something wrong, you can repent of it. But once you know the voice of God, and God says, do this, and you don't do it, you're in big trouble. Then it's something else entirely. Then you are willingly leaving the walk of God. If God tells you, you know that voice of God, and He says, you got to pray in tongues now. Or God says, you got to leave this job now. Go in there and you tell them this. If you don't do it, you are directly disobeying God. That's an entirely different thing than sinning. Now you're in a whole different category of stuff. And in fact, if you do that, there are always consequences for when you directly disobey God. Old and New Testament. It's not accidental. When God says, you go out and you do this, and you don't do it, there will be a consequence. Or if God says, you should not be going here. One of the examples is with Jacob. Jacob had all of his sons. But Jacob also had a lot of daughters, and a lot of bad stuff happened to his daughters because God told him to go somewhere, but he went to a place next to it because he was afraid of his brother Esau. So because he went there, God could not protect him because he directly disobeyed the voice of God. God said, go here, and everything was fine. Esau didn't hate him. Esau didn't want to do anything wrong to him, but he went somewhere else, and all sorts of terrible things happened there. And then it gets worse. His children, the sons, begin to deceive the people that are there, and then kill them all. And then God now has to judge the sons, Reuben and I think it's Reuben and the two of them. That this is before Joseph gets betrayed. Two of the very bad brothers are now, after they killed an entire group of people, a few days later now want to kill their own brother. Reuben and Levi. And that's where Reuben does something wrong as well, and he loses the birthright as the eldest son. And that's why it goes to Judah. That's why we're from the tribe of Judah, not from the tribe of Reuben. And it's all because this guy made an error. All because God told Jacob, you go here, not there. And there's a lot more worse stuff that happened, but it trailed down. Could God have stopped that from happening, even though he went to the wrong place? No. There are consequences. One pastor was told that he should exercise, and he did not exercise. And he was okay for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, a few years. A couple years later, he has a near heart attack and should have died. And he said, Lord, what's happening here? And God said to him, I told you more than 10 years ago to exercise. If you did, you would not be here. But now you're in trouble. So this man barely survived. Got out and then said, Lord, I repent, and went and started to exercise. And instead of it making the situation with his heart worse, it fixed him. So there are commands that God gives, and there are leadings that God gives. And the only way that we can know this is by building the good King's highway, by praying in tongues. And when you pray in tongues, you are moving things that are in your way, but you don't know about. You're moving them out of the way. If there's a problem at work, then it's not a physical problem. God says it's a spiritual problem, because behind every man, there is a spirit. And we wrestle not against flesh and blood. So we first have to remove the spirit. After you remove the spirit, God tells us in Joshua, no man can stand against you, for I am with you. Right? But the only way for God to be with you at that point is for you to first be praying in tongues, and God told you to move and do this. So God will never leave us, but we can leave God. So pray in tongues, move the things out the way, build the good things highway. And the more you pray in tongues, the closer you get to where you're supposed to be. And suddenly you'll realize what the picture is that you're looking at. And slowly, all of a sudden you'll just be there. That's how it works.